An elderly woman, nearly 80 years old, sitting alone on her porch in a small town somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, feeding leftover bread to sparrows while humming an old gospel tune. Her silver hair catches the morning light, and there's something about her smile that stops you in your tracks. Not because it's forced or fake, but because it's genuine in a way that makes you wonder what secret she's holding. Her name is Margaret, and the neighbors call her Miss Maggie. They whisper about her when she passes by, saying things like, "Poor woman, all alone in that old house, nobody to care for her." And yet she acts like she won the lottery. What they don't know is that Margaret holds the answer to a question most of us spend our entire lives asking. How do you find peace when life keeps breaking your heart? That same summer, a young woman named Emma arrives in town. She's 22, fresh out of college, and completely shattered. She just failed the bar exam for the second time. Her long-term relationship had ended when her boyfriend cheated on her with her roommate, and her parents wouldn't stop comparing her to her older sister, who seemed to have it all figured out. Emma came to stay with her grandmother in this quiet town, hoping the change of scenery might numb the pain. But every morning she woke up with the same heavy question pressing on her chest. Why does everything good in my life fall apart? One morning, while taking a walk to clear her head, Emma noticed Miss Maggie sitting on her weathered wooden porch. The old woman was scattering breadcrumbs for the birds, talking to them softly like they were old friends. What struck Emma wasn't just the kindness in her actions, but the lightness in her eyes. This woman had nothing. Her house was small and clearly needed repairs. Her clothes were simple and worn, and from what Emma's grandmother had told her, Miss Maggie lived completely alone. No children visiting, no fancy car in the driveway, no one checking in on her. And yet here she was, smiling like someone who just received the best news of her life. Emma couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the next few days, she watched from a distance. Every single morning, same routine. Miss Maggie would wake up early, sweep her porch, feed the birds, water her small garden of wildflowers, and greet every person who walked by with a warm good morning, even when most of them barely nodded back. There was something magnetic about her presence, something that made Emma's own problems feel loud and chaotic in comparison. Finally, one evening, Emma couldn't hold back her curiosity any longer. She walked up to the porch and asked, "Miss Maggie, do you mind if I sit with you for a bit?" Margaret's face lit up like someone had just handed her a gift. "Oh, honey, I'd love the company. Grab that chair right there." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sound being the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of crickets. Then Emma spoke, her voice shaking slightly. "Miss Maggie, I've been watching you all week, and I don't understand something. You live alone, you don't seem to have much, and from what I've heard, life hasn't exactly been kind to you. But you smile like you've never known pain. How is that even possible?" Margaret let out a soft laugh, the kind that comes from deep wisdom rather than humor. "Oh, sweetheart, I wasn't born with this smile. This took years to learn. Decades, actually. You want to know how I got here?" Emma nodded eagerly, leaning forward. "I do. I really do. Because right now, I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know how to come up for air." Margaret took a deep breath and began. "When I was about your age, maybe a little younger, I married a man named Henry. We met at a church picnic, and he was the kindest soul I'd ever known. We didn't have money. We lived in a tiny apartment above a hardware store, and some nights we'd share a can of soup for dinner because that's all we could afford. But we had love, real love, and when our daughter Sarah was born, I thought I had everything I'd ever need. Life felt complete." She paused, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "But life has a way of teaching you that nothing stays the same. When Sarah was about 7, Henry got sick. It started as a cough, then turned into something worse. We were living paycheck to paycheck, no health insurance, no savings. I took him to the free clinic, but by the time they figured out what was wrong, it was too late. Pneumonia had spread to his lungs. I sat by his hospital bed every single night, holding his hand, praying for a miracle that never came. He died on a cold February morning, whispering to me, "Take care of our girl, Maggie. Be strong." I wanted to die with him. I wanted to just close my eyes and disappear. But I couldn't, because Sarah needed me. Emma's eyes were already welling up with tears. "What did you do?" "I did what I had to," Margaret continued. "I worked 3 jobs. I cleaned offices at night, waitressed during the day, and took in laundry on weekends. I barely slept. There were days I was so exhausted I'd cry while scrubbing floors, but I kept going because Sarah deserved a future. I put her through school, made sure she had what she needed. And when she graduated high school, she got a scholarship to a university in New York City. I was so proud I thought my heart would burst." "She must be so grateful for everything you did," Emma said softly. Margaret's smile faltered just slightly. "She was, at first. She'd call me every week, send letters, come home for holidays. But then she graduated, got a job at a big marketing firm, met a man, got married. The calls became less frequent. The letters stopped. I'd leave voicemails that went unreturned. Eventually, I stopped hearing from her altogether." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "She just abandoned you?" "I wouldn't call it that," Margaret said gently. "People get busy, they build new lives. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she didn't know what to say, I don't know. But about 5 years ago, I decided to go visit her. I took a bus to New York, found her apartment building, and stood across the street watching her through the window. She was laughing with her husband, setting the table for dinner. She looked happy, successful. I stood there for maybe 20 minutes, and then I turned around and came home." "You didn't even try to see her?" Emma asked, shocked. "No," Margaret said simply, "because I realized something standing there. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone go with dignity. I could have knocked on that door, made her feel guilty, forced myself into her life. But what would that have given me? A relationship built on obligation? I didn't want that. So I let her go. And you know what? That was the moment I started to find peace." Emma shook her head in disbelief. "But don't you feel angry, hurt, betrayed? I mean, you gave her everything." Margaret reached over and gently took Emma's hand. "I did feel all those things, honey. For years. I was bitter, resentful, drowning in self-pity. But then I discovered 3 truths that saved my life. And I am going to share them with you because I think you need to hear them just as much as I needed to learn them." She held up one finger. "First truth. Accept what you cannot change. I cannot force Sarah to love me the way I want to be loved. I cannot go back and save Henry. I cannot rewrite my past. But I can choose how I respond to it. I spent years fighting reality, wishing things were different, and all it did was make me miserable. The day I accepted that some things are simply beyond my control, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Acceptance isn't giving up. It's choosing peace over a battle you can never win." She raised a second finger. "Second truth. Be grateful for what you have, not bitter about what you lost. I may not have wealth, but I have this porch, those birds that visit me every morning, the sun on my face, neighbors who wave at me even if they don't stop to chat, and a heart that still beats and feels. Gratitude isn't something you practice when life is perfect. It's something you choose when life is hard. Because it's the only thing that keeps you from drowning in despair." A third finger went up. "Third truth. Give more than you take. When you're hurting, the last thing you want to do is help someone else. But I'm telling you, it's the most healing thing you can do." I started feeding these birds because it gave me a reason to get out of bed. I help the neighbors' kids with their homework because it makes me feel useful. I share herbs from my garden with people who are sick because it reminds me that I still have something to offer this world. Giving makes you feel alive. It makes you matter." Emma sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. For the first time in months, she felt something shift inside her chest. Not a complete healing, but a crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. "Miss Maggie," she whispered, "you just changed my life." Margaret squeezed her hand. "No, honey. I just reminded you of what you already knew but forgot. You're stronger than you think. Life broke you, but it didn't destroy you. And now you get to choose what you build with the pieces." They sat together until the stars came out, sharing stories, laughing through tears, and finding comfort in each other's presence. When Emma finally returned to the city a week later, her problems hadn't disappeared. She still had to figure out her career, her relationships, her future. But something fundamental had changed. She started each morning writing down 3 things she was grateful for. She stopped obsessing over people who had walked away from her life. She volunteered at a youth center, helping teenagers who reminded her of her younger self. And slowly, quietly, she began to heal. Here's what we often forget. True happiness isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of purpose. Life will never stop throwing challenges at us. We will lose people we love, fail at things we care about, and face disappointments that feel unbearable. But we always have a choice in how we respond. Margaret's story teaches us that peace isn't something life hands you when circumstances are perfect. It's something you build, brick by brick, through acceptance of what you cannot change, gratitude for what remains, and kindness you share with others, even when you're hurting. We spend so much time waiting for life to get better before we allow ourselves to smile. But sometimes life gets better because we choose to smile first. In the quiet moments, in the simple acts of feeding birds and helping strangers, in the courage to let go without bitterness, we discover a kind of joy that no situation, no person, no failure can ever steal from us. So choose that joy. Not because life is easy, but because your heart deserves peace. Because you deserve to smile like Miss Maggie, not in spite of the storms you've survived, but because of the strength they revealed in you.